Hello, hello, and welcome to Millennial Notebook. My name is Stella,
And my name is Emily.
and here we talk about living life as a millennial in the modern age.
Get comfy, grab your notebook, and let's enjoy the ride together.
Hello, happy Monday, or any day that you're listening to this podcast. I hope you're having a great week. I certainly have. How about you?
I'm good. It's good to hear you in my ears again.
Same. So I think we haven't spoken in 3 weeks. You've
I
had a
know.
pretty busy month. Can you tell us about that?
Oh,
What was
my
keeping you
goodness.
busy?
So this month we're doing, and next month as well, March and April, we're doing lots of fundraisers for the venue deposit for the big event that I do a bit of work on.
Love it, love it.
So yeah, that's keeping us pretty busy on the Core front. Other than that, I was supposed to actually be going to like 2 conventions, but they both got cancelled because of COVID. Yay! So it has actually been too busy, but it's it all balances out.
Right. By the way, if any of our listeners are not aware of what Emily is doing for these projects, it's actually how would you describe it, Emily? Like, tell us about it, and then we'll link it in the show
It's-
notes if anyone's
It's
interested.
an indie convention basically. So it's a mini Comic-Con, but for cosplayers. So it's really cosplay focused. It's got like workshops and idol performances, or any performances really. Obviously cosplay is a really big focus, the cosplay competition. So it's like all the classic things that you have at a con, but we've really like put cosplayers at the front of it. So all our marketing's based towards cosplayers. All of our entertainment and things is kind of in that direction. So yeah, putting that in the front and center in New Zealand, which is great.
Love it. So if anyone's interested, the link will be in the show notes. So thank you for sharing. For me, I think I had such a great past few weeks. So I've been doing a lot of soul searching, not just with regard to my career, friendships. There were a lot of events that I feel like kind of shifted my perspective on how being a woman is quote unquote supposed to be. And by the way, that is what our episode today is going to be about.
Yeah.
So look forward to that. But to tell you more about my month, so yeah, there's a whole chunk of that about just figuring out my identity and where I wanted to take my life from here on out. And so those are the heavier stuff, right? So career and stuff. But the lighter stuff, so I had such a wonderful time. I got to experience a meditation class, a mindfulness meditation class led by a monk in
Ooh.
a castle in provincial Japan. I know, it's
Wow, you did some
what a
real soul
privilege.
searching.
I know, what a privilege. And I love how the temple is making efforts to make this a little bit more accessible to the normal individual,
Yeah.
right? Because the image is, once you go spiritual, you go all in.
Yeah.
And I think we should kind of move a little bit away from that extremist point of view of spirituality being an all in or nothing kind of
You either live and
mentality.
breathe it, or it's like
or nothing at all.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and whatever you believe in, it's like this actually comes into therapy, how breathing helps lessen or lower your stress levels because it helps your body relax.
Yep.
And that's what I advocate, right? And I've seen it help me through a lot of my my anxiety attacks, and I really recommend it to anyone who is looking to kind of help with just even the daily stresses of life.
Oh, yeah.
If you're working in a very extremely tough and stressful corporate job like I am, it's really necessary to be able to survive such a competitive environment. So yeah, so that was nice. And after that, I felt super recharged.
Wow. That's cool.
And yeah, and my friend just had his birthday this weekend, so we celebrated with him.
I did
he's
see
my-
some stories that were very interesting.
Yeah. yes, he's my one of my good my good friend's husband.
Oh.
And yeah, and it's so interesting. I actually have very few close female friends that have gotten married. And just so everyone is aware, I am turning 29 this year, and my friend group ranges from people aged from 26 to 30. Oh no, I have another friend who's turning 40.
Oh, wow. That's
So
a
it's a
big-
very large range,
Yeah.
but it's already at a range where some people would assume that, if it were in previous generations, people would assume that they would be married by now, and which is why we are diving into this very interesting topic
Oh, yes.
of our futures, or rather, what the expectations and what we want for our lives as women
Yeah.
in today's society, and even as millennials, right? Because things have changed throughout the times, and we wanted to kind of do a deep dive on, perhaps expectations back then, how much it's changed now, and where we want to bring that, right, for ourselves.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be
So-
quite an interesting one, I think. Yeah. I mean, I just want to start us off. I
Yeah.
finally watched Love is Blind, Japan.
Awesome. I really it's such an interesting show, and
It is.
I
Yeah.
think, and Love is Blind is the one for Japan is really special for me, because I feel like it really gives you an image of Japanese society. And my Japanese friends have also told me this when we were discussing the show. But if you actually compare Love is Blind, the American version
Yeah.
versus the Japanese version, it's very, like, it's quite contrasting,
It's
but in a
very
very
different.
interesting way. Yeah.
so-
And I love how there's not
Okay, so here's my perspective, right? I've seen the American one. I watched it about a year ago. Full of drama, proper reality TV, people screaming, having fits, making up, lots of sex comparatively. At least they kind of like show it and like is more physical and all these sorts of things. And then I go
Yeah.
into the Japanese one, like, how are they going to do this? Like, Japan's a little bit more reserved. My friends have sort of said, PTA is not really something they're comfortable with. My Japanese friends, it is. It's a little bit less PTA. So I was kind of expecting that with this one. But what I didn't expect, and this is a little bit of spoilers, sorry, is that so many of the couples actually broke up before the end of the show. So in the American one, they go like, there's, I don't know how many couples there are. There must be like 6 or 7, about the same amount of couples that end up coupling in the booths.
Yeah.
And, but a lot more of the couples ended up in the ceremony. So at the end, they do like a proper ceremony and they get married. Or they get up on the thing and it's awkward and they're like, actually, nope. And they run away. Like literally on the American one of them just runs away in her wedding dress.
That's so
And
funny.
it's so confronting and so like, I don't know, I couldn't do that. But in the Japanese one, like most of the couples towards the end are just like, actually, no, this doesn't work for me. And I'm not going to do that with you. So
Yeah.
goodbye. And it's like, that's it? And like, even on like some of like the, after they get out of the pods, they go on like this sort of honeymoon style date thing.
Yeah.
And like, even then half of them broke up. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what am I going to watch for the rest of the season? So I found that really like, it was kind of empowering because it was mostly the women that were like, you're not what I expected. This isn't going to work for me and I'm not going to put up with it. So
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah.
It's like,
Actually,
ooh, okay.
I had very interesting input from two of my Japanese friends. Like, we were discussing the show versus like the American one,
Yeah.
and they were sharing with me that this is very typical of your Japanese men, according to my Japanese female friends, where the Japanese men are kind of like, I don't know if it's a current trend, but I have read about it being a trend nowadays where a lot of men right now are kind of leaning into their bachelor lives and not wanting to get married and not being very serious about marriage, compared to ladies in the same, I don't know if it's an age thing, but if you noticed, a lot of the women who joined were actually kind of seriously considering the possibility of maybe finding someone to get married to, and they were asking very real questions, very serious questions that could kind of hint at their compatibility, whereas some of the guys were just like, oh, you went to Africa too, me too, I love you, kind of like. He didn't say I love you, but you know what I'm trying to get at. It's just they perceive the men as being kind of, this is like, it's an interesting thing to try, and therefore let's just date around. But the whole concept was like, you're gonna end up getting married. So my friends felt like there was a huge gap in like what the two groups of people were kind of expecting out of the show.
Yeah. I mean, I found that a few of the guys were a little bit too they were too, like, they just jumped at it, and they were like, you know what, I really like you, let's just do this. And like one of them just like out of nowhere gets on his knees and is like, you're gonna marry me, and she's like, right now, okay, sure. Like, it was really out of the blue, there was no lead up to it. Whereas some of the couples, and then some of them were like, I really like this girl, and I like refuse to back down, like she is the one. And like I think only 2 of them at the end came out, but it was still I don't know, it was such a weird and interesting juxtaposition to the likes of the American,
right,
in terms of like the questions they asked, to the goals that they had, to the way that it played out was completely different.
The show,
so interesting.
So my friends actually, one of my friends actually watched the American version as well, and she was saying that a lot of the foreign males in the show were actually a little bit more how do you say, like, they were actually more serious about the concept of like possibly truly getting married and finding their quote-unquote soulmate on the show, which is probably why perhaps the expectations of the two groups in the American one were a little bit closer together versus like what she said as versus in Japan, right, where the gap was really huge.
Almost like,
so that was
the
interesting.
Guys almost fell into it, where the girls really pursued it. And in the American one, I think maybe they lasted longer because both parties pursued it. They were like, I've made this decision. I loved this person in the pod.
Yes.
I want to make this work. So I think there is that more argument. The other thing too is I didn't see a lot of arguments. It's not like screaming matches. And I think that's the demeanor of Japanese people in general. But in the Americans are a bit more loudmouthed, and they'll actually have like a physical like, no, blah 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 blah, and it's like, but I want this, and then they have this really like big argument and they make up. Whereas in the Japanese one, it was just like the girl's like, so I have these issues, and the guy's like, yeah, okay. Yep. And she's like, so, are you gonna do anything about it? And she's like, okay.
It's so telling, though. I love it. I love it so much. Like, this is why Terrace House was also quite popular, because you know how, I don't know, the Japanese people are so calm, and I mean, it was also like, it's a cultural factor, and also how they were brought up. But it's very interesting, right? Because they're not so expressive, it's such a, like, what could have been a very dramatic show became very peaceful. I love this so much. I used it to relax after a long work day. But in any case, so the thing here is that, and this is another interesting point that my friend brought up, but the Japanese women were kind of, since a lot of them were also in their kind of early 30s, late 20s, which is, I'm sorry for the bell, that was my cat playing with his toy again, but anyway, so it's at their age range is kind of at this stage in their lives where they are kind of seriously considering having kids. And let's face it, women have a biological time limit.
The thing that makes
nowadays
me anxious all the time.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, technology has grown so much, and science has made it possible to kind of make it possible even later than we've ever had before. So we've seen a
There's
lot of ladies who
big
are
caveats to that, though.
exactly. So if you like their health considerations,
Yeah, money. It's
um,
also more
for
expensive. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's natural for women to, like, if you want to have kids, to consider it at this stage of your life where it's supposed to be the best time
Mm.
biologically to do so. And it kind of played a part in how serious the women were with this project, whereas the men
Mm.
were like, it doesn't really matter. Let's just see where this goes. And there was like a. Sorry, my cat is going crazy. Like,
He's gone mad today. He's so excited about our
is
conversation.
all the time, right? Last time, he never does this when I have a meeting at work. I'm just like, goodness, like, can you? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Anyway, so, where was I? So the expectations, right? And there was this couple where, so the lady was in her early 30s and the guy was like in his early 20s, and I
Mm.
don't know how successful they both expected this to be, but of course they had this conversation prior to him proposing, right, that he was willing to adjust to the girl's preference in terms of timing on when to get married and have kids.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think it was his attempt to kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to judge him, but like, was it coerce
Yeah,
her
to win her
into.
over and be like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course I want kids.
Yeah, and then like they're there and they're on vacation and stuff, and then he goes and says, oh, I'm sorry, I think I'm too young, I'm not stable enough to support a family. And the girl was just like, I thought you said you were willing to adjust to the timelines, and you know how I'm already in my early 30s and I want kids.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that different from what you said at the beginning? And I saw how that could have fell apart.
Yeah.
Really.
And he was the guy who just like, he was just so random about it. He's just like, yep, I made up my mind. Okay, let's get married. And she was like dumbfounded, like, what? So
yeah, but I love her. She's so cute. I love her. She's so pretty.
they're all really lovely. They
I
really were.
know. The women are lovely in Love is Blind Japan. I don't know if I can say the same for all the men, but the women are all lovely.
Yeah, I don't know.
On that note though, like do you feel like there are specific stereotypes or expectations of women and how their lives should kind of unfold throughout the years? Like, can you tell me a little bit about the expectations in New Zealand?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I really don't even know what the like expectation of a woman is these days. Being that we're a very Western, very forward thinking country. Like, I think most millennials will think having kids before 30 is young. But that's not to say that there aren't people out there who are having kids at like 20, 22, 23. But like whenever I hear that, I'm 27 now. Whenever I hear people having kids at like sub 25, I'm like, that's way too young. People getting married sub 25, way too young. Like, it's very jumping the gun. Like, I thought I knew who I was at 25. I had no idea who I was at 25. I thought I knew who I was at 22. I definitely did not know who I was at 22. So people like jumping the gun, getting married and like having kids and stuff is just like, it blows my mind.
Same.
So like, I think most millennials in general are kind of like, yeah, after 30 is a good time because it gives you time to at least like, study a couple of years into your career, or like good number of years into your career, and like travel a little bit and all that sort of thing. So I think the expectation after 30 is that you'll start to like think about it and settle down, but yeah, I don't really know. Like, my parents are not people to be like, oh, when are you guys getting married? Oh, when are you guys having kids?
They're chill.
They're pretty chill. And that's also, I wonder if I don't feel that pressure as well because I'm the youngest of four. So my oldest brother is just about 35 now. So Like, if anyone in the family's having kids, it's him.
It's him.
So no one's looking at me regardless, being like, when are you going to have children? But that's it on Jonathan's side of the family. And he comes from a religious family. All of his other siblings have children. His brother had his first kid when he was 23 or 22 even.
Oh, that's so young.
I know. It was kind of a, oh, shoot, we're having a baby. But he was already working at that point. He's had a really good job, and he's always had a really good job. And he's got 3 kids now. His other sister has 2 kids. His other sister has 2 kids. And I think there's a little bit of like, I don't know if his family are looking. I feel that pressure. So I do feel that pressure from his side of the family, because obviously all of his family have children. So there's a little bit of that, like, so Emily and Jono, when are you getting married? When are you having children? And I feel that pressure unwillingly. Like, I don't think they've ever said it, but you know, they'll make comments of like, when you guys have kids, and that sort of thing irks me, because it's like, oh, pressure, no thank you. It makes me kind of squirm, because I still feel like a child. Like, you expect me to look after another human being? Have you seen how I can keep my house tidy? Not.
Isn't it kind of, if you think about it that way, isn't it crazy how previous generations felt very ready to just dive into marriages even at an even younger age, like early 20s?
I mean, I think the people who all got married in their early 20s, in terms of my parents' generation, like, there's so many divorcees. My parents are obviously divorcees. The people that they remarried are divorcees. Like, Jonathan's family, his parents are still together, and that's an anomaly. Like, it blows my mind when people are like, oh yeah, my parents are still together. I'm like, oh, wow. What happened? What did they do right? What did they do wrong? Like, do they hate each other? And they just, like, you know, like, I can't imagine.
So what do you think was the stereotype there for your mom and the generations of women throughout the times?
Oh, it was definitely, this would have been in the 80s. It was definitely get married, have children, in your 20s, you know, there was no such thing as like going out and traveling and finding yourself. That wasn't a thing. You know, it was just, raise kids, and then when you're retiring or nearing retirement, that's when you get to enjoy yourself. That's when you get to go out and have fun and go traveling and stuff. And I'm like, who wants to do it like that? You're old. Like, not that old, but like, you're older, and you're you've had a life, and then you go out and do this. I don't know. I can't imagine doing that. Like,
so that's a stereotype.
Yeah.
Would you say it's kind of still prevalent nowadays?
No, I would say things have definitely switched. I think it's definitely a like, don't settle down, don't get married until you're, mid-20s at the earliest. Like, it's okay to go traveling, or like, it's encouraged at least to go on your OE. It's a lot more centered around that sort of stuff, but
so it's kind of shifted away from the stereotype then.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely has switched. It's pulled away from the stereotype to some extent. But
what is kind of like the rough percentage you think of people kind of still adhering to the stereotype, and people who are kind of veering away from that?
Ooh,
like, just a rough, like, how in terms of what you've observed.
I mean, it's hard to say, because I like, in my demographic, in terms of like white women with a job, with an education sort of thing, I would say that like maybe 15% of people, I would say even less than that, have children before 25. It's a very small percentage, but then if you look at the wider community as New Zealand as a whole, I would say you could be looking at 25-30% of people having kids before 25.
That's pretty low though, right? Considering like a few years ago it would have been a much larger number.
Yeah, and I would say that it's those 75%. Who are in that lower socioeconomical position where they have kids because perhaps they can't afford the contraception, or they don't have jobs, so they just kind of fall into it. Or you have people who have kids in their teens because they have teen pregnancies, and again, it's the lowest socioeconomical issue, I guess. People can't afford to for protection, and then therefore can't afford the abortion, or their parents disallow it because they're still under their parents' roof. So, I mean, that's still the case for a number of people out there. But yeah, I would say that most women who are working, who have their own pay, who are, whether they're in relationships or not, tend to be really proactive on their protection and sexual health and that sort of thing. So they can prolong it. But I'm definitely... it's hard to say as well, because my friend group, none of us have kids. A few of us have houses.
Interesting.
No one is married. And they're all coupled up. Like, all of our friends are coupled up, but no one's married.
Okay.
I think only one of them just got recently engaged. So, and I think we're all a bit late bloomers, but I think we're all very career focused as well. So that would make a good reason why we're just not really in that family mode. But,
right.
yeah, it's interesting, eh? Like, yeah, I just sort of see myself as like a lone wolf sometimes, where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm swimming in this unknown pool of life, and you want me to have children? Like, what is wrong with you?
Interesting. So, right, and maybe because the generations that have gone through those kind of expectations and stereotypes are still, very much healthy and living, I would like to assume, because your parents, grandparents, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why it's still kind of like the expectation is still there. Whereas imagine in 20 years, 30 years from now, when we've kind of become that generation, right? Like, let's say we get into our 60s. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a very different story, because like we've led very different lives.
Yeah. So our expectation...
Yeah.
The expectation of what we had will also go to our children, and like we'll be like, no, don't have children. You're too early. You're too young.
That's very interesting. I'm actually very interested on how that would shift, right, in the future. Like, interesting to hear that, because the stereotypes in the Philippines well, it's actually not. It doesn't really. It's interesting because, like, despite the cultural differences, right, it's still quite similar to what I've heard from you right now. And of course, I attribute that to, years of colonization, back to the history lesson of 300 years of Spanish colonization. So back when tribes were still the primary kind of social structures here in the Philippines, I have heard that the women were actually more in power, which was a very interesting thing to discover after years of kind of education that was based on the European and American context, right? And I found out that it's one of the reasons why our language has a very kind of neutral, like, it's not a gender-based kind of language. But in any case, circling back to what I grew up with, right? It's very Western in that sense, where, of course, the women are kind of expected to be at home, have children. And, despite the Philippines being a little bit more flat in terms of, like, equality, right? The gender equality issue. And I'm very thankful to have been brought up in such a society where women were respected just as much as men. We still have a lot to go in terms of that. We're in, for example, I remember, because a huge part of the Philippines is largely Christian. I don't have an exact number on that, but I would say from what I remember back in school, it's at least 90%.
Wow. Is that Catholic or Christian?
A larger part of it is Catholic, but it has diversified in different groups of Christianity.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. And then the remaining percentage would be in the southern area of the Philippines, where a lot of them, if I'm not mistaken, Muslim.
Right.
So a lot of our holidays are actually based off of Christian holidays.
Yep.
So yeah.
So,
Anyway,
so like
so
Easter and Christmas and stuff like that.
exactly. Now, because of this, it's very traditional, right? The perception of like how women should be the ones to kind of protect the family and your children. And it's actually quite, I mean, I've moved away from that, right? Like I am not as religious as I was brought up to be. And I think I've chosen to become, I'm agnostic.
Yep.
So so I no longer kind of follow.
You don't conform to one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in any case,
But you're not atheist in which you don't believe anything.
yeah. So anyway, I grew up with that belief of like women should just procreate and you're not. And it's kind of like I really, it makes me sad about how I was brought up to believe that, I'm not fulfilling my purpose if I'm not gonna give birth and have kids, because that's literally what I was kind of brought up to believe. And so I had education at an all-girls school, which was of course very religious. And it's if I remember we had a class where we were kind of raised to not choose abortion. And they gave us like tiny dolls of fetuses at different stages of the pregnancy. And basically they were telling us, so if you abort them, you're basically aborting this tiny human, which I understand.
How accurate
right?
was the stuff that they showed you, out of curiosity?
My goodness, like it's been years. And I, learning for like going into college and then learning that, these aren't necessarily the most accurate things.
Yeah.
I kind of just rejected that whole concept. And also, there's a whole debate on that, right? Where what if the person was, what if the person is a survivor of sexual assault?
Yeah, exactly.
Then why should we expect them to live with that kind of responsibility, right, of another human being, where there are so many negative feelings associated with that? Of course, like I do not deny that, I have one of my really good friends is kind of, she, like a lot of people who have been adopted are kind of the miracles of very negative situations, and I think that's wonderful. But it's such a huge debate. But in any case, there's a lot of all of those burdens placed on the shoulders of a very frail and like fragile female, and some of them are very young. So there's that stereotype, and it's shifted now. Like I find it very interesting because like most of the people in my friend group, and not even just my friend group, right, the like people I've met in uni, in my network, very few of them are married. And even if they were, so we do have people who have gotten married recently, even if they were, they still don't have kids. And so I associate this with kind of, there are a lot of factors to this, right? Like the economical stability of, like, we have, like, millennials have it really hard.
Yeah.
The economy isn't great. So I'm pretty sure there's that factor there, right? But also I wonder if it's also because people want to take a little bit more of an active role in how their lives kind of shift. Because once you have children, right, it's a huge responsibility. And I wonder if a lot of us are more aware about how big of a responsibility that is, and therefore we don't want to kind of take it lightly, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's I mean, if we talk about ourselves, for me that's exactly it. Like I know how much of a, I don't want to say a burden, but like how much of a responsibility it is to look after a child, how much sacrifice you have to do as an individual, and like I am not ready for that. And it's I think the thing that's really conflicting for me is so I was watching this great documentary in which it says about the age between ages 27 and 25 and 35 is like the time to have children, in terms of like lack of birth defects or healthy children, healthy for the mother, etc. And the percentage of healthy births, as in like people at births without, you know, major defects, it drops significantly once you hit 35. So her 35 and then
I have heard of
36
this.
onwards, it drops to like 15% of children born are born without birth defects, which is just so confronting. And like, I don't even want to think about it. But like I'm 27 now and I still don't really know. Like, like there's this, there's that feeling of like, I can imagine it, but I'm not there yet. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Like, I had to think real hard about my own kind of like what. So there are those expectations, right? Of kind of, you know, just because of the biological aspect of it, and also like the cultural aspect of it, like, you know, families kind of wanting to see, like the usual excuse is I want to live to see my grandchildren, right? Is I feel like a common thing that any
we will we will live to see our grandchildren. Like old people people are living longer and longer. Like we're likely to live to our 90s on average. So
God,
of
I don't know
course
if I
we're
want
gonna
to live
see
that long.
we're gonna see our grandchildren. It's gonna happen.
Yeah,
But
no, but you know,
that shouldn't
like
be the reason you have kids, though.
our parents, right? Like feeling a little bit like, I don't know if they just use it as an excuse
Stuff
to
our
get us
parents.
to give.
They had us. What more do they need? Why are they
True.
so greedy?
Oh my
Like,
goodness,
oh.
that's true.
But that being said, I do want my parents around to help me because God, I wouldn't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, but then like so there are those expectations, and I don't know, like I feel like a lot of women are moving away from that just because we are finally at a generation where we are seeing a little bit more of fairness in terms of the workplace, where we are able to of course there's still a lot of work to be done in this space that I'm speaking of, but you know, the right to vote has not been a thing several hundred years ago, right? And so we're living in a generation where women are more empowered than ever, and we are contributing to the economy, and I think in a very wonderful way. And I think a lot of women are just trying to kind of find a space to be able to do what they actually want to do, and also kind of be able to balance that with the other types of roles that are stereotypically placed on them, right? Like being the mother figure. And actually, if you think about it, like a lot of women have had to juggle so many roles at once. And I watched I read a book. So there's a female psychologist, and she was very successful in her career and in homemaking. Like she was superwoman basically. And at some point she just like dropped out of exhaustion. Like she was on her way to her master's program. She was going to the gym every day and like taking her kids to and from school, and also working and studying at the same time. And literally she hit a tree because she fell asleep on the wheel because she was just so exhausted. And you know, having to think about that, right? Like I want to be able to continue my career. Like my work is my life, aside from my friends and family, of course. Like it's one of the things that keep me kind of sane. And by work I mean like even this podcast is to some degree you know, it's a work of passion, right? But it's still work, so that's what I mean. Like
Does
something that I
ever
create
scare you though, that what if one day it's, say you get to 40 for example, and you're like, actually the work's not doing it anymore, I want I want to look after something, I want to have kids.
I know,
and it's
I'm
too
terrified
late.
of that happening.
Like,
I know,
I'm
I'm
exactly the
terrified.
same. I'm like, well, it's too late. Like, it's physically, biologically too late at that point. And so, like, I feel like no matter what, I'm going to be forced into a situation that I'm not happy with because of my biology, which just, it sucks.
Yeah.
unless I can adopt, which I'd love to do, which comes with its own friggin' hurdles and, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is what
Yeah,
keeps
like,
women up at night, by the way.
no, it's a very real thing, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 2 years older than you, so I
Oh,
probably
yeah,
had to go think about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So I have done my research, and so I guess shifting the conversation to the question, do you think these expectations and our future as women, do you think it will change, is the primary question here, and I believe it will. And the reason why is because, so after doing a little bit of research, we do have options for this, but you have mentioned it earlier in the podcast where it's going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
So one of the considerations that you can do to kind of it's like insurance, right, for a future that you don't know you might want or even need, is to, I mean, freeze your eggs is a consideration. So the ideal time to actually freeze your eggs is sometime, actually it's in your late 20s is what they say for the best
Yeah, I think, yeah.
eggs. It's so weird talking about it like this, but like, and then but a lot of women choose to, and not just because they choose to, right, like they're only actually financially stable enough to be able to do this for themselves when they're in their like kind of early 30s ish, mid 30s. But it's an option that you can explore. But the question is, like, will you, like with the economy nowadays, will we ever be able to afford it?
Yeah. Which there's a
it gets
big
very
no
expensive.
For me.
Yeah. So it's kind of sad, right? But there are ways to kind of like move around the boundaries that were set upon us, not just by society, but just literally out of like biology, right? And as for like other things, right, so this is biology. What do you think about like the pay gap? Like, how are you experiencing this in New Zealand, working as a corporate lady in New Zealand?
I would say the pay gap kind of comes into things when it's, I don't think the pay gap is necessarily an intentional pay gap. For example, like women get paid less than men. Well, I mean, it does happen, yes. But I don't think it's that we get paid less. I think it's that the opportunities for us to move into the roles where we would get paid more are still being taken by men. So
yes, I would agree with that.
a lot of the time, I think women end up making their own businesses and doing their own thing because the opportunities for them run out. For example, in my particular role at the moment, I'm sort of intermediate already. Like, I'm still intermediate, which I'd like to be senior at this point, but you know, can't have everything. But to go into a lead role, the role that's just been taken in my company, not that it would have been offered to me anyway, but it's been taken by a guy. The guy who manages the company, like manages it, actually does all like the proper managing of it, is a guy, obviously. All of the guys above him are guys. So but interestingly enough, we've got a 50-50 in terms of women in the company, but we're all at we're all at junior, intermediate sort of levels. So, and I think...
Why do you think it's like that? Like, is it skill, age, experience? What is it about?
I think it's a boys' club. In the digital sector, it's very much a boys' club. Where I don't think women necessarily see themselves in those roles because they don't want to be with those. They don't want to be in those roles with those people. As much as I really enjoy my colleagues and stuff, like I can't see myself thriving in a role with them. Like we value different things, and women just generally, we tend to value different things in a company. So, you know, we talk about quite a lot. I've got a lot more female colleagues that have come in the last 6 months, but you know, the things that we talk about are like why do we not get more sick days? Like in general, people should get more sick days. We get 10 a year, which is pretty good for the world. But like women have period cramps every month, and sometimes they can be debilitating, and we just have to deal with it, you know.
And it's crazy, right? Like I am lucky enough that it's not so bad for me, but I had a roommate who had very, very extreme cramps that she's literally bedridden from it. And there's no kind of consideration for that. And sometimes women are gaslighted for that. Like, whatever, you just like, you're full of shit, right? Is what
or just get over it. Like, oh well, like just deal with
really
it. And
sad,
I don't think
so real.
I don't think there's any consideration from male counterparts about how bad it can actually be. So we were talking about as women colleagues, as we do. We're like, oh man, it would be really nice if companies did this. And actually recognized how debilitating it can be. And then there's also things like menopause as well. Women in their 50s go through menopause, which can be, you know, it's your hormones. It can have a lot to do with your mood. There are so many things that women go through in a biological thing that are so debilitating to us that we're constantly behind in a pay gap. Because the other thing too is that, like, I don't want to work senior roles in my company anyway, because you get overworked. And, like, I want a work-life balance, which is like a millennial me. So yeah, I'm probably always going to be behind in the pay gap. So,
but I wonder if that's a female thing and rather just like a generational and personal thing as well, right? But
I don't know. It's definitely a millennial thing. It's definitely a generation thing. Gen Z have got a much better grasp on it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I see.
But I feel like it's also. Don't you think it's also because of the times that we're living in? The internet has made us so accessible. Right, like back then with our parents' generations and the boomers as well, like they, once they clock out, they're out. Like literally you have to phone them to come back to the office to do something, and they'd be too far away by then, right? And whereas here it's like now that we have the internet, literally, like, they could be like, oh, there's an emergency, can you handle this right now? And literally, like, you're having dinner with your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever family, and then you have to come in for work because it's quote unquote an emergency, right? So I think that plays a role into that, and that's why you're overworked, right? And I feel like this is another very important topic that we have to talk about how like the how tech has helped us, but also kind of gave us more problems than we ever even realized.
I think it's made us. I mean, there's this whole concept which we could definitely do a deep dive into, and it's kind of like overproduction. Whereas, you know, things like a 40-hour work week made sense prior to the 2000s because in order to get anything done, you had to have the manpower doing the hours. Like, it needs to be done. But now, you know, if we work office jobs, we work in tech and stuff, like, we have so much productivity apps that we're, like, in terms of what we can do, if we use them correctly, we can produce so much more, but we're still expected to do the 40 hours, which I am a huge believer of, like, a 30-hour work week max. Like, no one should be working more than 30 hours a week. So I reckon 4-day weeks, great. 6-hour work days is, like, that's where it should be, because we can be more productive with the tools that we've got, which should not make us work more, but should enable us to take the time to enjoy life. Because, you know, some people run businesses where they don't have to touch it. They work an hour a day, it runs on its own, it's automatic. Like, that's how it should be. Like, we're just, I don't know. So many things, but...
Yeah. Well, circling back to the topic about how, like, for example, the pay gap, I think it's the problem here is that sometimes there are certain societal expectations to what a productive worker would be, right? Like, linking it to what you were saying, because, for example, there are certain companies that perceive women as taking a break as a liability, right? And so, like, in my previous company, I literally, the owner of the CEO literally told me while we were trying to hire another person, he literally said, I don't want to hire a woman because she's gonna, and this is Japan, by the way, so they're still very far off from like what I would hope as a very progressive and flat country in terms of the gender gap. But yeah, because they didn't want them to take a maternity leave, which would mean that they'd have to take a break from work, because God forbid that the Japanese people take a break from work, right? Whoa, as if the world would end with if people can just take a break. But
can I say something super controversial?
Okay, let's hear it.
I kind of get the idea of not wanting to hire someone because they're going to take a break. I get that.
I get that.
I get that because it's annoying to have to hire people and like, but it's shitty at the same time.
Yeah.
That women feel like you get to a point where like you just might not get the job ever.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
you're at the age where it's like, oh, well, you're expected to run away. And like it's the expectation on women always, which I mean, I get it from an employer's perspective of like, oh, damn, I have to train someone else to do this job. But there are so many people out there that I'm sure you could find someone to do the job. Or I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who want to step up into a role, and this is the opportunity for them to step up. You just have to take the gamble and be like, yeah, you're qualified enough to do this job and you want to do this job, therefore we'll give it to you. But some people are like, oh, you don't have any experience in this high level role. And it's like, yeah, because I can't bloody get at my door. I can't get in the door.
So I actually agree with you, and it's one of the things where I feel like as a woman I have to constantly struggle with, right? Because sometimes it becomes a choice between like, what do you prioritize? You prioritize your family life, right? Like I kind of like, so moving into this the part of the discussion where we like, I'd like you to also talk about like your expectations of your future and what you'd like for your future. But I feel like the society that we are living in is kind of forcing me to make a choice between like whether I should have children or whether I should just keep working at my career, because I've gotten far enough, but not far enough, right? There's still that glass ceiling that I have to break. And, to get here, it took a lot of like convincing my employers and my bosses that no, my career is my priority.
Yeah, and you constantly have to fight and battle that and convince people of that. It's like they won't take you for your word,
But then the thing is, right, like at what expense? Like eventually, maybe, I don't know, in the future, maybe I'd end up regretting it.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, I've decided that I will focus on my career. And that's a choice that I feel like it's so like the oh my God, like it's one of the difficulties of being a woman. Like men don't have to think about this, right? Because they don't have to give birth, right? And they're not the ones who have to take a break because their body literally has gone through hell and back with like giving birth to a child.
Yeah, which is physically and emotionally taxing, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing, right? Like some men are more open to being the homemaker and the women working, but like just because of the structures that are upon us, it's kind of really hard for women to not take a break, because like what do? You can't implant a child into a man and have him give birth. God.
And like surrogacy is great, but like again, it's a financial barrier, and like it's not substituted. It's not like the government doesn't do anything about it. They're like, no, you're gonna have children. If you can't have children, okay, maybe we'll let you have a surrogate then.
And also like with and since it's highly unregulated, there are so many issues with surrogacy that I believe in, like if it's consensual and if women are safe, the surrogates are safe in a safe space, then I'm all for it. But the thing is, a lot of these women, from what I've done my research, of course. A lot of these women are, of course, coming from very difficult backgrounds, and some of them are just pushed into the situation, right? And a lot of them are actually quite exploited. Yeah. And so there's that moral aspect of that, and it's just there's so many things to consider just for us to be able to kind of flatten the pay gap, because the opportunities are quite slim because of all of these considerations that we have to think about, right? So I don't actually blame the employers 100%, but I do blame the society that has kind of put priority over full efficiency, right? Like why can't we take breaks, right? Why, like I understand you mentioned a while ago that you understand the perspective of the employer, where if an employee takes a break, then it's kind of like it's you have to find someone else.
Yeah.
But then why do we always have to kind of be 100% every single time? Right? Or we could have like you could actually prepare for that, right? Where you make sure
your
that
processes should be good enough that
Yeah.
one person, like one cog, shouldn't break the machine. Like your system should be
Yeah.
good enough that anyone can do anyone's job. So it's a
Yeah.
failure of the company to not be
exactly.
efficient. Like
Exactly.
it should always be, you know, a well-oiled machine that works regardless of all the cogs are there.
Exactly. And actually, like, so right now I'm working as a director in a media company, and it's actually very male dominated, but it's efficient in this aspect where, if I had to take a break tomorrow for any reason, my colleague will be able to cover for me. And I think that's, you know, that's a sign of an efficiently working organization, at least in this aspect.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible. It's just that our company is willing to do this. And oftentimes we unfortunately find that the answer is no, right? So, but it's getting better. So I want to know your stance on this. Like where do you see yourself going with all of these considerations and changes, and also the things that have stayed the same? Like, how do you see your future as a woman of this generation?
I see myself probably having kids at 35, and I'm
Ooh,
super
okay.
against pregnancy. I hate the idea of it. I hate what it's going to
I
do to my
feel that.
body. I don't want any part in it. So, like, if I can somehow get a surrogate, that would be amazing. My number one thing would be adoption. I would love to adopt. That would just make... It would make me feel good because, like, I'm saving a child in a way.
Yeah.
Only thing is, in New Zealand, we have open adoptions, so the other family would be involved in the relationship. And then I'm still in that sort of crossroads of, like, but I want my own biological kids. Like, I want to have a part of me in them, and so
Yeah.
I'm kind of at this. I'm at a fetus point of view where it's like, look, 35, it's gonna happen. Like I can't get around it, and but I have a lot of role models around me. 35-year-old women who've had children around the age 30, 35. My coach, my skating coach, is one of those, and she's kind of a role model for me. She's not a motherly type person. She's pretty career focused. She told me the other day she doesn't play with her kids. She just kind of gives them a ball or something and lets them play outside. I don't know what she
Oh
does
my
with
gosh,
them.
that's so funny. Gives them a ball. Like that
like
sounds like a dog.
I know. And I was just like, oh my gosh. She works with kids, by the way. She's a coach.
That's so funny.
But she's just real pragmatic about stuff. And so I have like good role models around me who kind of, you know, and I look at them and they are 35 plus now. And I can kind of see the age gap between us.
Yeah.
So I have hope. I don't know. That's where I'm at. I'm like, look, I don't want to think about this till I'm 30, even though it creeps into every conversation I have. But
Yeah.
that's where I'm at, I guess. Well,
I see.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What about you?
And do you
Where are you
plan
at?
to keep on working, by the way?
Oh, yes, very much. Work till I die. I love working. I'm the same as you. I love working on projects. I love being creative. I like seeing things grow, and like I like having a job to go to. It makes me feel like I'm in need. You know, I have a purpose.
Yeah, I love that.
I like having a career. Like, so, yeah. Stuff you all. I'm gonna keep working till I die.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think I lightly touched on this a while ago, but I think I will end up choosing my career. Like you, I don't want to think about it until I'm there, but I think I want to kind of so like unfortunately with this economy, it's very hard to save enough money to be able to like build up to that what I proposed a while ago is like, you know,
Yeah.
freezing your eggs and stuff like that. But it's something I definitely want to save up for because I don't want to force myself into a partnership with someone that I don't really am not, for example, not am not fully compatible with or don't love.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be able to wait for that person, but we don't know when that will happen, and I just want to be able to set up like at least like a kind of insurance for myself that at any stage in my life, whether it's like much later, I'll have that option to be able to have kids is what I want to prepare for.
Yep. Yeah.
But career will always be a very important aspect in my life, and it's actually why I'm hoping I find someone who is willing to be the family man, the house father.
It'll be a
'Cause
dream come true.
No, I'm not kidding. Like, I really do hope that someone, like, if he, because the thing is, I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know if I actually want kids just as a personal preference.
Oh, yep, ditto. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and not just because of the birthing process, but it's just such a huge responsibility
It
that
is.
I don't know if I'm capable of, like, I take my responsibilities very seriously, whatever they like, whether it's a relationship, my work, whatever. It's something I take very seriously, and kids, like, oh my goodness, like, there's so many things that I just can't control.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I feel like I'm like a permanent child, right? But
I think we all feel like that until it happens, and then
Yeah.
we're like, "Oh, I'm an adult now. This is what it feels like to be an adult." But from
Yeah.
everyone that I know that's gone down that path, I would say that it never happens. You just live with a thing attached to you. I don't know.
yeah, but yeah, so that's me.
Yeah.
I've decided that I will focus on my career and give myself some leeway for options in the future. So I will save up for that. Instead of saving up for a house, I wish I could, but then, the economy isn't great, so we have to focus on certain things. And I've decided I will put a little bit more of my savings into that, I think, in the future. But, that's another thing, right? But that's another thing. I feel like we have to talk about this as well. But, like, I wonder how much of this is just me being kind of programmed to believe that I will want kids. Because, like I said, I don't know if I want kids right now. Like, honestly, I don't even know if I want them in the future. But why am I doing this? Right? For what insurance is this? Is this really for me or for what I've been programmed to believe that I want, right? So I have not found the answer to that yet,
Yeah,
but
neither have I. Good to
the
know that
clock-
someone at
the
29 still has no answers.
I know, like, yeah, and yes, and the clock is ticking, so I might as well just put that there. So
Yeah.
that's me. So if you are a very kind, handsome man, just kidding. I'm not gonna look for
Slide
men
into
here.
the DMs.
Just kidding. So
If you're a
There we
family
are.
man, jump in my pants.
all right.
Well,
So
this
that
has
was
been
a
fun.
very this was a very, very interesting episode. I hope you were able to get as far as the end of this, and thank you for staying with us if you have. So yeah, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear if you're a woman and also trying to figure out what you want to do for your future. Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear
Yes.
your perspective on this issue, and maybe there are other options we haven't explored yet that we'd benefit from knowing. Please let us know.
Oh, yes.
And
No,
yeah,
it's
thank
cool.
you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and go follow us on all our social media, YouTube, Instagram, Anchor,
Very soon TikTok.
Spotify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, and we hope you'll have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.